The Open Data Portal is a website at data.cityofchicago.org that contains about 600 different data sets pertaining to activities and information that is pertinent to Chicago residents. We're in the 4th year of having the Open Data Portal. There was an executive order that was signed in 2011 which required the city to have an Open Data Portal to publish information not only that you can go and view and see maps, but also able to download information from the data portal into software that you might want to use with it. And so the Open Data Portal is used sometimes just for informational purposes. Sometimes it's used by application developers to create applications based on real-time feeds of information. And sometimes it's used just simply for your traditional reporting by journalists to go take a look at information and see what happens. So today I'm going to go through a couple different ways. I'm going to go through how to use the data portal in its most fundamental parts. So how to find a data set, how to interact with the data sets, how you can search and filter and do some of these basic things, and then also how you can download information and use it in perhaps in another program that you might want to use with the Open Data Portal. So I'll go through a couple scenarios and I'll show a couple of different ways that the Open Data Portal has been used in kind of innovative fashions by other software developers. And so these websites also might be helpful for you as you want to take a look at information that's happening in the city of Chicago. This is what you're going to see. On top are a couple or 4 data sets that we just highlight, usually just because of pertinence of the information or other activities that are going on. And here you see in the middle a list of the most popular data sets that you can get a hold of. So you can take a look at 25 popular data sets. So these are good ways to discover something, to see whether or not even the city of Chicago has something. Is just simply look at the top data sets here that we're highlighting, and then take a look at some popular data sets that we have here. So our most popular data set, for instance, is a list of all employee salaries. We have also a list of what we call problem landlords, and so these are landlords deemed by the city to have, they've had repeated ordinance violations, critical ordinance violations pertaining to the maintenance of buildings, and so we highlight these addresses in these locations. Building permits, places that have filed and received building permits from the city of Chicago, and a number of other different data sets that we'll get into. There are a few different data set types that we have. And so when you interact with the data portal, you're going to see a few different things at the same time. So one example is we have data lens pages. And I'll show you what this is, but a data lens page is a dashboard of sorts, so you can take a look at some high-level information. Data sets themselves, as you see here, data sets themselves are actually tabular information, so a lot like what an Excel document would look like. Charts and maps, we have a lot of map information. Calendars, so we have very, very few data that are actually just calendars in themselves. Filter views, which are based on other data sets, which we then create, so oftentimes we'll filter something down. And we have a few other data sets that we don't use too much, so I won't really highlight on these either. For discovery purposes, you might want to take a look at the categories of data sets that we have, such as administration, finance, buildings, community and economic development, environmental sustainable development, ethics, events, FOIA data sets, facilities, and geographic boundaries. For the purpose of especially this audience, let me just open one of these categories here to see, so you can see what will pop up. And what you're going to see here shortly is a list of data sets that we've marked as community and economic development data sets, such as affordable housing rental developments, affordable rental housing developments, active business licenses. I'll go into that data set a little bit here today. City-owned land inventory, land that is in fact owned by the city. Business licenses, public chauffeurs, the list of all licensed chauffeurs in the city, people who can drive taxi cabs and liveries, and so on. So the one way to discover data sets is sometimes simply to click on these categories, or what we also have is something called topics. So topics are these kind of tags that we assign to different data sets that are much more granular. So you can take a look at GIS or geographic data. We have a number of performance metric data sets talking about the performance of the various city departments. Budget data, boundaries, which is another way that we talk about geographic data sets. We have a bunch of lobbyist data sets. So in terms of discovery of several hundred data sets, sometimes the problem is, well, what do you even have? And a couple of ways that I would suggest, again, is take a look at the top here, take a look at some of the most popular data sets that we have, or start taking a look at the categories. If you do know we have something, so if you know, for instance, that we do have business licenses, so you go home and you say, okay, well, that guy talked about having business licenses, how can I take a look at that information? The best way to interact with the data portal, as soon as you know we have something, like how you interact with the internet, is simply to search for it. So we have a search bar here in the left-hand side. If you want to take a look for something that you do know we have, or you just want to see if we have something, you can just simply search for it, so business licenses. So we'll have a search result pop up here in a moment. And you see a number of different data sets listed here in front of you. Now here, first I talked about these different view types, the different types of data sets we have, and this is where it becomes pertinent. So you see that business license is labeled a number of times. Sometimes it's quite clear the differences. So this first entry here is business licenses, and if you look at the third entry here, it says current active. So these are business licenses that are only active, not business licenses that have since expired or existed in the past. I talked about the different view types because that's how you distinguish between these. If you see this icon here, and in fact if you hover over it, you'll see that this first entry here is a table. I'll first open this up to show you what a table is. The tables arguably are the most important data sets that we have. They're the most interesting, it's the most robust. It provides the most granular information. So if you want granular information, I'd recommend that you take a look at the tables. But just to highlight this, Berghoff, which has the oldest business license in the city of Chicago, has it here. Berghoff Restaurant, anybody have a guess of how old that first business license is? BACP staff is not allowed to answer.
50 years.
What's that?
50 years.
Probably about there. So we have a bunch of Berghoff, so let's take a look here. This first entry, we have Berghoff Restaurant. We'll scroll over. Again, it's a lot like interacting with a Excel spreadsheet. So some of these application dates are fairly recent because they've recently renewed their licenses. Let's continue to scroll down.
Well, actually, Iris doesn't.
How far back do you guys go?
It only goes back to 2000.
2000. So we got all the way up to 2003, which is going to be about, in 2002, which is about the earliest digitized form. But I think their license goes back a good 40, 50 years at this point.
Sometimes you could see some historic dates in there, maybe 99 or 97, but I think that was from a data dump.
Yeah.
From a previous.
So through this mechanism, you can see raw data. I'm going to come back to this because there's a lot of things that you can do here. And again, this is where a lot of the power is with the open data portal. But I'll come back over here to the business license data set or the search results that we have. So the second entry that you see here has this other icon next to it called a data lens page. And if you recall, data lens is what I said was a dashboard view. So let me just open this up so we can take a look at what a data lens page is. So this particular page was created by the open data team, where we took that data set that you see here and we created this dashboard view of it. So instead of seeing raw information, such as you see on this data set, you see some higher level information. So you're going to see all the oddities, the ups and downs of the business license data set. So date issued, the number of business licenses issued by date. And so you see the frequency. In May 2006, it shows that there are 7,685 business licenses issued. Number of licenses by the expiration date as you go through these different years. As you see with these older data sets, there is no values. You can also see some of these heat maps here. So these are the location of business licenses by the community area. So we're here in the loop, and there are 64,100 business licenses issued here in the loop. If you go to East Garfield Park, where it's less of a commercial district, there's 3,913 business licenses that were issued. So it provides a quick look of information, and you can also do some very simple filtering. What's interesting about this view is it has a feature called cross-filtering, which means when you click on something, all of the graphs change on that. So if I want to take a look, as I kind of accidentally did here, licenses issued between August 2011 and, one moment, and July 2012, so about 1 full year of data. I've highlighted this area here, so you see the area that's highlighted. And you notice that now this graph behind me here has this little faint outline, which was the original values. And now this shows me just for the area that I just highlighted. I can now take a look at the filtered areas for all different areas, and also the map. So now that map that I take a look at, it's only showing the calculated values for the area that I looked at. I'm going to press on this expand this chart button here, so I can take a bigger look at this. I'm still only filtering for that 1 year that we have. And now I can hover over these areas. And so before, when we took a look at the number, it was 64,100 business licenses. But for that 1 year, there was 3,291 business licenses that were issued. So this is a good way to take a quick look of what's happening in the city of Chicago. You can also do some filtering on name. So doing business as name, so I can type in the word Berghoff Restaurant. Let me clear this filter. The reason why I have no results is because I'm still only looking for a year, so Berghoff just simply did not have any activity for that year. So I'm going to remove this filter eventually. Sorry, this is my computer's fault here. There we go. So now I have Berghoff Restaurants, and now I have just the results that we saw in that tabular form on this other data set. So I'll bring that back down. So it's interesting when you're able to interact with a data lens page. It provides that dashboard view so you can take a quick look. Briefly touching on some of these other data set types. So when we take a look at business licenses, we see that this is called business license current active. So these are only active business licenses on the data portal. If you look at the icon, this is what you call a filtered view. So this is based on something else, but we created a filter just to highlight a particular topic. So business license current active, it's based on business licenses, and you see a hyperlink, and if you click on this link, it's going to come back over to business licenses. So it's telling you where this actually derived from. So the purpose of this particular data set is to only look at licenses that are active. They have not expired, they're not at some point in the future, they're happening right now. So it gives you the same view as you saw with the original data set. It's a table still, but it's a filtered table. So you can derive different information from this as well. And finally of interest is a map. Maps have this particular icon. Oftentimes though, we just simply in the title call it a map. So it draws out a bit more. So let's take a look at a map. A lot of our data has geographic information on it. If you can use GIS programs, you can download this information and create your own maps. But a lot of times you just want to see this information online. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit because there's so much information for the purposes of making sure the browser can work. It gets broken out quite a bit. So as I zoomed in here, I clicked on a few things to get closer, and now I'm able to click on these individual dots, which show information about the particular license. So there's a studio cast business. You see the account numbers, you see the wards, precinct, and police districts that it's located in, the type of business license that it is, in this case a regulated business license, license number, and so on and so forth. So maps give you a view of what you want to look at. If you want to actually look at the data in a map when you're taking a look at that. Now, in that dashboard view, you're able to see what we call a tile map, or sometimes called a chloropleth map, which is things were aggregated up to the community level. So you saw the total number of licenses for the community level. The dashboard does a really good job of that. This does better when you want to see actual pinpoints. You want to click on a business and you want to see what's happening. If you want, you can certainly enter an address. Let me go a little bit slower on that, sorry. This icon up here in the upper left-hand corner allows you to navigate to a location. I'll type in 333 South State Street. And I'll type in Chicago, Illinois, just for good measure. So now I'm transported to that address, and now I'm able to take a look at what's happening within the vicinity. So I can then click on these dots to zoom in, and then finally look at those points. So if you want to see if you want to see what's happening around your house, you can just type in your address and then go to that location and take a look at everything that's happening around you.
Tom, could you just tell us how you got to maps to begin with?
So this was coming. The question was how we got to maps to begin with. So when we typed in business license, we had a number of different results. The fourth result here has maps. So I'll show you how to make maps. We'll go through the process of making a map because you can do that on your own as well. Using this website, you don't have to use any other special software. But anytime that we do have map that's listed on here, you can just click on that, and those are pre-made maps that we've already provided. It's important to point out that this map is only current active business licenses. So we're very particular about the title. So we have the title, it's business licenses. It's a current active business licenses only, and then it's a map at the end of it. So you can sometimes tell in the title, and sometimes you can also just simply tell by looking at these icons that appear next to each one of these data sets. So just a brief review to check in to see how we even got to this place. When you go to data.cityofchicago.org, you can discover data sets by taking a look at the top row here and take a look at the data sets that we've highlighted. You can take a look at our most popular data sets that are listed here on the first page. You can also page through if you want. You can go through the multiple pages, but there's almost 1,000 pages, so that only goes so far. But this is an interesting thing just to see what we have. And then if you kind of know what we have, if you're looking for something in particular, you can just simply search for it. And when you do search for something, you come up with a you do come up with something like we just saw here, which is a full-on list of data sets that contain the word business licenses. And then there's multiple different types of data sets that you can select as soon as you have these search results, such as the data set itself, such as a dashboard, such as a filter, and such as a map. Yeah?
I'm interested in learning about restaurants that close in one particular year. So when I look at the data set for business licenses in a subcategory, how would I go about that?
Yeah, so in that case, if you're interested in looking at restaurants and that have closed, or in this case, what probably you're going to be looking for is licenses that have expired around business licenses, you could type in the word restaurants, for instance, and search for restaurants, see what we have. But knowing the data sets, I would look for the business licenses. And then, this is a good example, you're going to want to do some filtering, right, to get down to what you're actually looking for. One of the things that's sometimes hard to deal with when dealing with the data portal is dealing with the nomenclature of how the city defines things. So for instance, when you want to say, well, I'm interested in taking a look at a license around a restaurant, well, restaurant can mean a number of different things. We have licenses for food establishments. And so are you looking for anybody that sells food, or are you going to be looking for what you traditionally think of a restaurant, which is go in, sit down, or go to an ordering counter and get food? Because to sell food, many grocery stores sell food these days, especially these days, where they have these kind of restaurateur licenses. And so some of it is trying to grapple with what you're looking for and then crosswalking that over to the nomenclature of how we define things. But let's kind of touch on that a little bit as we take a look at interacting with these tabular data sets. Because most of the time, if you want to do something that's really interesting, something that's a bit custom to answer a question you have to take a look at a data set a lot like this. So you can interact with this data set, this tabular data set, in the same way that you can interact with an Excel worksheet. So if you've ever worked with Excel or anything like that, you can do a lot of the same functions. So we're looking at the Berghoff here. The Berghoff does a lot, so it's actually a good business to take a look at because it's a retail food establishment. This is what oftentimes we would call a restaurant, is a retail food establishment. For some time, it sold tobacco over the counter. I think that has now not taking place anymore. Consumption on premise, so this is a liquor store as well, so you can not a liquor store, sorry, but you can sell alcohol on the premise of this. And you see a lot of this is repeated. You also see that it has a limited business license. I think almost every business in Chicago has a limited business license. It's the most broad category of license that you can get. And then we get into another business. And you discover weird things, such as at one time that they had a home repair license for a reason I don't know. So there's a number of things we can take a look at here. So just focusing on the Berghoff a little bit, if I want to take a look at other places that have a retail food establishment license, I can do a number of different things. I'm going to hover my mouse up here, and then there's this little icon called the menu that I'm going to click, and you can do a number of things that you can do again in a typical Excel workbook. So you can sort it. So you can sort all of these license descriptions by alphabetically, starting with A or starting with Z. So that's a very simple function. You can filter. So this is actually a good list of all the different types of unique license descriptions that you can filter by. So we have some of these licenses may no longer exist because, again, this is looking at licenses back to 2000, and so some of these may have gone away or been combined. Bed and breakfast license, a body piercing license. But if I'm looking, if I just want to simply filter based on predefined values, I'm going to filter down to a retail food establishment, which I see here. And if I click on that, it will take a second here. And now only the only data sets I'm taking a look at this point are the retail food establishment, including just of the Berghoff. So of all those different lines of Berghoff cafes, or sorry, the Berghoff restaurant, I can take a look at the retail food establishment licenses. Now let's take a look at this. Now the reason why there's so many of these is because there's the issue and then there's continual renewals. So every single time that this place of business comes up for renewal, they apply for a new business license and we update that. So we have a number of different columns, many dates on this particular data set. So we have application requirements complete. So that's the date that took place. The payment date, the license term start date, and a license term expiration date. So this is now starting to get to what I think you're becoming interested in, because now you're able to take a look at the terms of all these different licenses. Now, it's a little bit complicated because there's these constant renewals, and so you're going to be looking for these renewals up to the point where it's like, well, it didn't get renewed anymore. And there's a number of different ways why that could happen. So what we're taking a look at is the Berghoff restaurant, and then there's also the Berghoff cafe as well. But you're going to want to kind of chain these things together until it kind of terminates. And a very interesting use case that with business license, a very good friend of mine. He manages a bar, And he, through the data portal, discovered that the bar had not renewed its license. And when he went to the owner, confronted the owner, goes, the license hasn't been renewed. We don't have an alcohol license right now. And the owner would say, no, we already filed for that. And he was actually able to go to the data portal. He didn't even consult me about this. He just went to the data portal. He's like, no, the city says that you haven't done that. And it was actually a very interesting exchange where he had an owner that was not being forthright with him, not being honest with him, and he was able to use this data to say, no, we don't have a license right now. And so by being able to chain these things together and having some context of the problem, you can find the information that the city has on a business. And this automatically updates every single day. Now, maybe a day or two we'll have something didn't upload right and we didn't complete the upload or something like that. But 99.9% of the time, this is going to reflect the most accurate information that exists within the city databases. And this gets updated about 5 a.m., 6 a.m. every single morning. So it's pretty up-to-date information. This information was updated just a couple hours ago.
So let's say I would like to compile a list of BYOB restaurants that don't have a liquor license. How would I go about doing that?
That's going to really start putting things together. So let me just jump right to it. So do a brief check-in on what we just did here. We did a very simple filter. I'm going to show you a couple other ways that we can filter by clicking on this menu option. So using this menu option, we can take a number of very basic steps, such as filtering and sorting, without having to do anything particularly fancy. I'm going to clear this column filter and just back out for a second. And you can do that with any column. Any column that you have here, you can make that selection. Now, one of the questions was, well, how can I take a look at restaurants that or restaurants that exist but don't have an alcohol license? My first reaction to that is you probably want to actually export this data because you're going to need to work with it quite a bit. You're going to need to work with it quite a bit. And it's a good example of showing how you can just take this data, download it, and work with it in kind of your own custom way. So there's this export button that you see behind me here. I'm going to click on that. And the immediate options that I have, there's a number of options that you can click on these menu here, but the immediate options I have is downloading the data set. So if you have Microsoft Excel, you know how to work with Excel, you can click on export, and I would highly recommend that you just simply download what's called CSV. CSV is a particular format. It opens up in Excel natively. Excel has no problem in opening it up, but if you download that, you'll get the entire data set. And it'll open up into Excel. This one will take a few seconds, and I'll actually cancel this out because this is a very big data set. You want to take a look at business license over the last 15 years. Another recommendation I would have in that particular instance is I would use what we have already started a little bit, which is only current active business licenses. So you're probably interested in restaurants that are just open now with no alcohol license, is that correct? Yeah.
Well, they could be in business a year or two.
Okay. So if you're looking at ones now and we have some of these predefined filters, I would encourage exporting this particular data set because it does some of the work that you no longer have to do and just get the ones that are open now. In this particular case, the reason why it's going to take a little bit more work is because you're going to want to first filter for only retail business establishments, retail food establishments. Then you're going to want to go through those, and you're going to want to take a look at the retail food establishments, and you're going to want to match those to all the other licenses that the retail food establishments have. And you're going to want to look for the ones that don't have a liquor license, a retail, or an over-the-counter license, or it'd be over-the-counter license, I believe. So there's some more advanced filtering you can do as well on these sort of data sets. So I'm going to click on this button here called Filter. And there's a number of different operations you can do. So I'll go to Add a New Filter Condition. And when you click on this, you have a number of different columns, and all the columns that we have on the data set. And you can perform more advanced filters, and you can start putting together a number of different criteria. So let's do the same filter we did before. which is a license description. I'm going to scroll over to remind myself. And I can do a lot more interesting things. So I can look for license descriptions where it is a retail food establishment. Or I can look for all the data sets that are not retail food establishments. Or if I can't really remember what it was, I can just simply say, well, I know it's retail food, but I forget what the other word was. So I can say, well, I can say all licenses that start with retail food. Very interestingly, if I can't remember it all, and all I know is I want to look for a tobacco license, but I can't remember what exactly the name of tobacco license, and let's just pretend it's not in one of these first 20 rows here where it's easily referenceable, I can just simply look for any license descriptions that contain the word tobacco. So I just type in tobacco, and I say, okay, if it contains the word tobacco, just return that back to me. Or look for words that are not contained within that, or is blank. So if you're looking for whatever reason, if we have a blank in there and the blank is of interest, and a blank would be, for instance, this line where I have my mouse hovering, I can take a look for that as well. So I'll take a look for where it is a retail food establishment. And let me add a new filter criteria. So I can also continue to add more license descriptions. So I could take a look at retail food establishment. I could take a look at liquor licenses. I could take a look at all these different criteria and conditions. But I'm going to add another filter criterion condition. And I'm going to look for license term expiration date. So this is a date column now. I'm looking at a date. And now I can take a look at relative to time. So I can take a look for if the date expiration, license term expiration date is today, for instance. So if I'm interested in retail food establishments whose license expired today, or maybe even just yesterday, I can use the data portal to do that. So let's take a look at the 8th. Well, okay, so that seems to be too narrow. Let me back out a little bit, and I'm going to undo the look for retail food establishments. So maybe I just want to look for all licenses that have expired yesterday. All right, so on those particular days, nothing happens to expire, but I can do other more sophisticated queries, such as is not, let me change the date to today. I can take a look for it not happening on a particular day. I can take a look at things that happened before today, or I can take a look at when the expiration date is after today. So basically give me all retail food establishments that are going to have a license that expires at some point in the future, which is to say that they currently have a business license. So you can work through these you can do a lot of filtering right here in the data portal without having to use your own computer to help answer some of these questions. And that particular question, that's, I think, a bit more difficult. But with your question, we're starting to get towards the solution here, which is, okay, I want to look for a couple of different particular licenses, and then I want to take a look at when certain these things expire at some point in the future, but happen today. So you can continue to add more and more criterias and use this mixture of drop-down boxes to select the columns and these little drop-down boxes to select kind of the operation or logic that you want to apply to the filter. So that's a useful way of doing some analysis within the data portal without having to use your own computer and just simply use the available data that's online. Because again, all of this work is being done on our servers. This is just simply happening in your web browser. Now, if you really want to get to something that perhaps is a bit more numeric or a bit more analytical, under this filter button that we got here, remember that's how we got here, we press this filter button. When you press the filter button, you get this menu. Well, I can select this other menu, this sort and roll up. Sort and roll up. So when you sort and roll up, you can now start sorting things, and what you can do is roll up things. And by roll up means, well, I want to take a look at the number of businesses per license category, right? per license category. Well, how do I tell you how many retail food establishment licenses are currently active? How do I do that? And that's when you start doing this filtering and you start sorting and rolling up. I'm going to go back down to the filter here, and I'm going to undo this search on retail food establishments. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to show all. Let me start over just to make sure I have a clean palette here. So I have filter. I'm going to add a filter condition, and I'm going to look at the license term expiration date is after today. So these are all business licenses whose license do not expire until some point in the future, which is to say they currently have a business license. Now I'm going to get rid of the sort here. I went up to the sort and roll up. I'm going to get rid of the sorts, and I'm going to go to roll up and drill downs. So there's two different concepts here. There's going to be a group by and there's going to be the roll up. I'm going to first deal with the group by. So I'm interested in how many different licenses, how many different businesses there are under each one of these different license descriptions. So I'm going to take license description as the roll up. So everything's going to get rolled up and aggregated by the license description. And then I need what is called the actual roll-up. So what do I actually want to count? So if I'm going to count all of the businesses that are in each one of these categories, I just need something to count by. And so let's just call it the ID. The ID is the ID of the business and the account of what's actually. So I'm just going to simply click on ID here. And let me click apply. So this is a little bit out of order. This isn't great because it's out of order, but I can tell some things. There's one license ID of home repair that is going to expire some point in the future. There's 161 license IDs that will expire sometime in the future having a late hour license. Packaged goods, 1,227. Okay, so this is not retail food establishment. Now we're getting into the big ones. 12,207 that are going to expire at some point in the future. Limited business license, one of the most broad categories. 25,931 that will expire. That is to say that they currently have one. Well, this is not alphabetical, so that's not fantastic.
How did you pull up this column?
This column, so this gets applied by after doing this work. So the group by is the license description. So the license description is like home repair. That's one of the descriptions. And then I said, well, count all the license IDs that have home repair. And so then the data portal is going to take this and aggregate it all up into these two columns. So it kind of blew away the data set that we did have. It's still there, but now it's just simply summarizing the data for us in a way that's useful. So I've rolled everything up into this aggregated count, but now I want to sort. So I want to sort the license description because it doesn't make sense the way that we were looking at it here. Okay, great. Now it's alphabetical. So if I know the license description I want to go for, I've now made it alphabetical because I clicked on sort. I clicked on the column being the license description, and I just simply clicked on the direction, which is ascending, which means kind of a natural alphabetic order. So now I'm able to scroll through, and if I know what I'm looking for, I can just simply now take a look at that. Now, what if I wanted to look at it by size? I wanted all the biggest, the ones with the highest counts on top here. I just simply change my sort to look at the license ID. So now license ID, remember, is now the count. It's the number of licenses. So I sorted by ascending, which is the natural way that you sort things, and in this case it's actually from low to high. Well, that's not useful, so let me switch the direction from ascending to descending. So from high to low. Okay, great. Now, this is a bit more of a natural way to look at this sort of data, right? Which is show me the number of licenses These are, again, licenses that at some point in the future are going to expire. That at some point are going to expire, and I'll zoom in here.
Like within the next 12 months?
At some point in the future. Some point in the future. You could do the next time in 12 months. So let's go back. Now remember, we've done a few operations to get to this point. I'm going to go back to filter here. Let me revert. Let me just blow everything away, and I'll walk through everything just one more time again. So we found this data set, business licenses. It seemed interesting. I'm going to go to filter. I'm going to add a new filter condition. And license term expiration date. Now, before, we just looked for a license term expiration date after today, right? So at some point in the future that the license is going to expire. But you proposed something interesting. What about the next 12 months? Or maybe what about the next 6 months or the next 3 months? In the next quarter, how many business licenses are set to expire in the next quarter? So now I can go is between. So I'll go from today to 3 months from now. 1, 2, 3. So between now, December 9th, and now March 9th, how many business licenses are set to expire between those points? Okay, now I've done the filter. Great, the filter is there. I'm only showing businesses right now that are set to expire, their licenses are set to expire in the next 3 months, the next quarter. Now I want to go to sort and rollup. Let me first do this drill down. I want to group by, which one do I want to group by? License description, because I want the counts by license description. And then I just need to count the license IDs, the actual license IDs. So I select license ID, and I'm telling it to count the number of licenses. I'm going to not do the sort right away. I'm going to click apply, just so we can take a look at what we have. Okay, so we got numbers. That looks something like we want, but let's sort it up because this is not exactly how interesting to us. We have to do a lot of scrolling. So let's click on sort, and then let's sort on license ID. And remember, we want to do from largest to smallest, so that's a descending sort. If you don't remember, you just switch between the two and figure it out. And I clicked applied. So now we know we got 3,191 businesses, licenses that are set to expire within the next 3 months. And that's the largest because it's the largest type. It's what almost every business has. The retail food establishment, there's 1,490 that are set to expire within the next 3 months. And this is just a schedule. This is nothing in particular that's happened here. It's just that's when it's set to expire. So we're now able to answer some questions again, not having to download it. When you don't need to match things, you can just simply, if you want to count things, this does a really good job of just simply counting things and mapping things. That's what this does a good job. If you want to do something more interesting with it, you can download the data. Let me give you an example of somebody who's done something very interesting with this data set. I mentioned earlier that programmers can hook into this data set to take a look at what it was. Well, there's some students down at the University of Chicago. They wanted to come up with a business index for Chicago. You know, for the national economy, there's these leading economic indicators that say, okay, what do we think the economy is going to do in the next 6 months or so? Well, that's based on national economic data. You know, there's plenty of national economic data. But what about Chicago? You know, what is the economic situation going to look like for Chicago coming up in the next few months? What has the trend been lately? And so they did some interesting things. So this is called howsbusinesschicago.org. And I want to scroll down here to this one of these indicators. Again, this took some programming to actually put together, but this is what happens when you start exporting data and you can start interacting with it. They actually come up with a trend line for the number of business licenses in Chicago. So arguably, if we have a lot more business licenses, that means the economy is on the way up because businesses are opening up. If it's going down, then we're probably in a recession because the number of businesses going down. So let's take a look. The recession, if you recall, happened around this January 2008. That's when the last recession begun. And indeed, you take a look at the number of business licenses. Now, there's a lot of ups and downs because of just the ebbs and flows of this, and that's what the light line is. But they did some statistical trending to show that, oh, it's going down during the recession. And it was a very long recession. And around July, June, around the summer of 2011, things started to trend back up. So they categorize this holding steady because it's about steady, but it's on an upwardish trend lately. And so this is an interesting way how people have been able to take that raw data and use it to create kind of this business index to see, okay, it's one of many indicators that they have for the Chicago area. The other data set that they have is the number of building permits. And so that's what this new construction is. So they took a look at building permits of, okay, who's building in Chicago? And again, you see the kind of same trend. In 2008, January 2008, look what happened. Started to tank. And then we get to the summer of 2011, it kind of comes up, but it dips again. But now it's back up and it's holding steady. So construction activity is another economic indicator. So this is another data set that they took from the Open Data Portal. This is the building permits data set. And then they include some other data sets from other agencies as well and combine that together. So this is some of the interesting work that you can do and what programmers have been able to do with data like this. So if you're running into, well, that on the data portal, I can filter, I can sort, I can do some of these things, you can always export it. And if you can do it or you know somebody who else can do it, they can do far more sophisticated things with it. So as you notice, I keep hitting this revert button. That revert button is always, okay, just get me out of here, get me back to the thing I kind of started with. You can always just close the tab and look for the data again. I do want to touch on a couple more things. I'll keep with this data set just to make things a little bit easy. I'm going to go through and basically recreate it just for another time, just so we can have practice. I'm going to create that same aggregated count again. I'm going to take a look for business licenses that expire over the next, at some point in the future. So I click Filter. License term expiration date is after today. Great, have that. I'm going to sort and roll up. So I'm going to group by license term, sorry, I'm going to group by license description. I'm going to count the number of IDs. I'm going to apply that. All right, so third time we've been able to walk through that. All right, so now I have this view. That's fantastic. I have now a table that is 63 rows. All right, well, that's fine. Maybe I want to graph this, though, or I want to visualize it. And that's where this Visualize tab comes into play. So I can make different graphs. All right, so I can make a column graph, a stack column, a bar chart, a stack bar chart, a pie graph, a bubble plot, a line graph, an area graph. So I can do all of this different work. Well, I want to graph this. You know, we looked at this table, but my mother won't understand this, and I want to show her all the good work I did so she can be happy. So I click on this bar plot here. I have everything kind of organized. I click on this bar plot, and I want to show, well, what do I want to label data? All right, so there's these kind of helpful graphs. You know, what do I actually want the label to be? Well, the label itself is the license description. I want to show the counts of the license description. So the label is a license description. The values, the actual piece of data that I want to visualize, is this column called license ID. Right? this column called license ID. So I selected that. All right, now we're starting to get a graph. All right, now we're starting to get a graph. Right now I have all of this I have this data below here. This is a bit cluttered. I'm going to press this little X button to get out of the way. Okay, so now I have a graph. Well, that looks fine. I'm able to take a quick look at everything. I see home repair, I see hazardous materials, and I scroll down, and well, that's kind of annoying, right? That's not great. I can hover over, and now I see the numbers. So 25,931 licenses. That's a bar far bigger than the others. Okay, so that's interesting. But I don't like how this is sorted. So I'm going to go back to filter. And I'm going to click that sort button. So I'm going to go do what we did before. I want to sort where the biggest items are on top. So I'm going to go reapply this filter. Oh, there we go. That's a bit nicer. That's how people are going to want to look at the data. They're interested in the thing that's the most, and then the things that are small they want towards the bottom. They don't care about that. So when you sort these things up and when you aggregate these things up, you can then now start making visualizations. And so we just walked through and we made a very, very quick bar plot. All right, we're able to make a bar plot within the data portal that has this interactivity. If you want, at this point you can sign up for the city. You can sign up on the data portal because you can save this. So if you want to keep this for yourself, you can sign up with the City of Chicago. It's just you use an email address and whatever password. We really don't use it in any other way. We don't we don't require personal information. You can if you want, but we really don't use that for any purpose. This is more for your personal use. So you can then save this graph. You can save all of the work you've done. You can save filters. Yes?
So let's say in this graph, I want to put this on my website. Is there a source code
Yes.
that I can embed in my website?
So as soon as you save this, there's this embed button. And you can click embed. And it says I have to save it, but as soon as you have the code that you can then copy and paste into a website. And it's the same thing with the data set. If I'm looking at a data set, so this is a data set here, I can click embed, and I can just embed the data set. A lot of times you'll see the data portal embedded into City of Chicago websites. You go to a page on the City of Chicago website, and it'll say, here are all the business licenses in the City of Chicago. And what you'll see is an embedded view of what in fact is this page. As soon as you save it, you can give the link to anybody else, and anybody else will be able to view that data set, or you can embed it into a web page that you have as well. Okay, so we've done now a handful of things. We've discovered data sets. We've kind of understood what the different data set types are, tabular views versus this dashboard view, filters, and maps. Okay, so we've made a graph now, and so the Visualize tab will allow you to kind of create these sort of plots. There's a lot of online tutorials. You can take a look at these online tutorials to figure out how you can make these different types of graphs. I won't touch on those right now. The other thing I want to show you is how do you actually make a map, because that's the other thing people are often interested in is making a map. So we already have a map of all the business licenses on the City of Chicago, and that's fine. All right, that's fine. But we can make our own custom map based on what we want to take a look at. I'm going to press revert so I can get back to the thing I started with. I want to make a map, though. Let's use an earlier example. Let's make a map of businesses whose licenses are going to expire in the next 3 months. I want to see where that's actually happening at. Let's see where those businesses are at. So I can do the exact same thing we did before. We click on filter, add new filter condition, license term expiration date, is between today, and I can type in as well, 3/03/09/2016. Great. So we've quickly filtered everything again. All right, so I already have the data set that I need. If you scroll all the way over to the right, you see this column called location. This location are the geographic coordinates, the latitude and longitude. It's displaying a bit weird. It's a latitude and longitude. It's the location of all of these businesses. So we geocode them based on their address. Well, if I want to make a map, I have the filter that I want to start working with, and now I click Visualize again. Now we see the familiar charts that we looked at before, but I actually want to make a look at a map now. So then I click on Map. So there's a couple of key things that we need to do. We need to define the plot style. And there's a few different maps. I'm going to start off with a point map. A point map gives you the dot that you can click on to see what's happening. I'm going to do a point map. And then I need to select the column that actually tells me where the location is at. This is quite easy. It's location, right? And most of the time it's going to be location. So we always name the location data, or the location column as location. So I'll apply. I'll click Apply. Again, I don't like this thing down here, so I'm going to get rid of it. So there are 7,666 businesses that are going to have their license expire in the next 3 months. Let's take a look. Well, let's take a look at our address. We're at 121 North LaSalle Avenue Street. I always forget. Boulevard. None of the above. All right, so we're now at City Hall. We're able to take a look. These are all the businesses in the area that are going to be expiring in the next 3 months. Well, that's not helpful. I click on that and it says, well, view details for this row. Well, I need to tell it what I want to, so I could click on view details for this row. Let me just click on there. The legal name is Steve Fulton Shoe Parlor. Oh, the shoe parlor downstairs. That person's license is going to expire in the next 3 months. Okay, so go tell Steve. Hopefully we sent a letter. But I actually want to view this in the bubble, right? That's the helpful thing here. So I'm going to go down here to Advanced Configuration Options. And you get all this. I can customize the color. When I hover over it, I can customize the color there. I can customize the point size. Flyout configuration. What do I want the title of the flyout? The flyout's the bubble that we're looking at. What do I want the title to be? Well, give me the license name, or give me the doing business as name, the name that he's operating under. And then also show me the license description. What kind of license is he? Let's add more flyout detail. Show me when it expires. So show me the date when it expires. Okay, let me apply. So this is a way to make sure that it performs well. So when there's a bunch of dots together, it's going to give you a big circle and just tell you the number that's within there. And when you get close enough where the browser doesn't have to display so many dots, then it'll give you the individual dots. But if you display a bunch of dots in a web browser, the web browser then becomes small because it's trying to draw all of these dots all the time. So let's jump back to our address here. This little icon that you see there, that little icon right there, that will actually use your current location. So I could have, instead of typing the address, I can just press this and it'll geolocate me to this location. All right, so let's go. Oh, so there's Stevie's. All right, so now we've changed it. So now we have this interactive map that shows pertinent information when you click on it. Again, you can save this, you can share it, you can embed it. These are all the businesses that are the newsstand over here at Block 37. And of course, there's going to be a lot of businesses here in Chicago. All right, so right there, we're able to make a map and be able to click on all the businesses that are going to be expiring. They're going to have their license expire within the next 3 months. All right, well, let me back out. It's nice to be able to click on buttons, but what if I want to know where generally in the city are all these licenses going to expire? Is it going to be the Loop? Is it going to be River North? Is it going to be a neighborhood? Where are these licenses expiring? Well, I get these dots. I'm not a big fan of these dots, but that's not terribly helpful. If you want to see generally where, I'm going to go back up to point map. Let's make a heat map. What if we make a heat map of where all these licenses are going to expire? So heat map is what it sounds like. I'm going to click apply. I switch it over to heat map. Clicked apply. Some of the bubbling is weird. Let me close this down. There we go. So I see these kind of intense red spots. These are small business districts that, intense areas of businesses that we have across the city. So I can now scroll across the city and see where there's intensity. So obviously the red areas show greater intensity of where these businesses are going to have their license expire in the next 3 months, and the lighter and the bluer areas elsewhere. So a heat map is able to show us a different view within that. Okay, so that's about it. Well, we've done a few different operations. Again, we've been able to discover data sets. We've been able to take a look at where they're at, where the data sets are at. We've been able to tell the different types of data sets that are there. We've been able to do some basic filtering. We've been able to roll that up, and we've been able to do a bit more complex filtering. We've been able to roll that up, and so we're able to tell summary numbers. We're also able to make a graph, and we're also able to make a map with that. And if all else fails, if that's not good enough for us, we're able to export that data into an Excel spreadsheet and be able to interact with that. So those are some of the most fundamental steps that we have with the Open Data Portal. That's all I have so far for prepared remarks. Is there any questions that I can help answer?
Earlier you showed us how to compile a list of different license types.
Yes.
That expire in 90 days.
Yeah.
So if there's a particular license type where we want to find out all the businesses for that particular license type, how would we go from the count? Once we know what the count is, now we want to drill deeper and find out the names of those businesses for a particular license type.
So I'd go back to the filtering. So if you want to go back to, we can step back here a little bit, but I'd go to that filtering pane. That filtering pane is quite useful. Where I'd go to the filter and I would put a filter in of licenses that are going to expire in the next 3 months, next 90 days. And then I'd put another filter condition in there. It says where the license description is equal to retail food establishment license or something like that, or limited business license. So you can continue to add more filter criteria to that entire. Or perhaps you want everything but limited business license, because limited business license is almost everything. And so if I want to exclude all the limited business licenses, I can say, well, don't show me those. A little bit jammed up here, but I'd just point back to those filter criteria, and you can build up those filters any way that you want to show time criteria, licenses you do want to look at, licenses you don't want to look at, to be able to further take a look at that.
And when you use the rollup versus the sort?
So rollup is going to give you counts. That's going to kind of give you that summary information. The sort really, all the sort was doing was just making it a bit easier for us to navigate through all the 65 different rows that we had. And so unless the sort is okay, but it's probably only to help you navigate certain aspects of it. The roll-up is that really important step, though. The roll-up gets you everything. The sort just makes it easy.
Earlier you mentioned about tutorials. Are they on this website or are they on a different site?
So the way that I would look up things, we use, for this particular data portal, we use a website called Socrata. And so Socrata. And then if you look up something like Socrata, make a map, that'll get you tutorials, oftentimes on YouTube, of walking you through how to, and so here we go, creating maps in Socrata. Now, I hit on what are probably the most common things that people want to take a look at, but this gets you to repeat the tutorial. And we hope to be releasing some videos as well, specific to our open data portal on how to do these steps. So if you type in Socrata and then whatever you kind of want to figure out, that'll get you there.
When are you going to be teaching this class again?
So we're going to be, we've worked on a video that we hope to release to the public where it provides this basic overview again, so you can just do this on demand anytime. So I don't know when we'll do this one particular again. We'll do it from time to time, but we hope to release not only a basic video but also more advanced videos, because you can get very, very complex with this data portal and you can do very, very sophisticated things with it.